Hi, everybody.
Hey, everyone.
Happy Valentine's Day. Sorry, we had a little bit of a technical difficulty there to start off with. But happy Valentine's Day. We're here.
It wouldn't be good Valentine's without a nice, big, scary error message, right?
That's true. That's true. So I'm going to go ahead and get this party started real quick. I know you.
And I'm going to go ahead and comment in the other live stream to let people know to come here. So I will be right back.
Right. Absolutely. So anyways, hi, everybody. Happy Valentine's Day. Excited to see you. Thank you for joining us. And yeah, thank you for hanging out with the technical difficulties we had. We had a lot of fun today. Hopefully you guys are excited to make a couple of cocktails. So the plan is that we are going to learn a little bit about the history of pink gin from Jeff from Gin Lane 1751. He's going to tell us about pink gin, the history of pink gin, a little bit about his brand, and then we're going to talk about some cocktails. We're going to make 3 cocktails. So today we're going to make the Negroni, the Salty Dog, and the Clover Club. So 3 very quintessential cocktails, all using gin, all my favorites, just like, I guess it's kind of like children, right? You can never pick your favorite one, but they all kind of have some really cool different representations of what gin is possible, or what is possible with gin. So yeah, that's kind of the game plan that we have today. So hopefully you guys are having a great Valentine's Day. I'll be monitoring the comments, so feel free to let us know, what your favorite gin cocktails are, and any other kind of gin pieces of history, or if you have any jokes about gin, we highly recommend sharing those as well. But yeah, we're going to see if we can pull Jeff in here as well, and he can talk a little bit about, let's see here, talk a little bit about Gin Lane. So actually, before we get started, you can head on over to abarabove.com/Valentines to take a look at the shopping list, all the things you're going to need to make these cocktails with us. All of the bar tools that you're going to need to make all these drinks with us as well. But I'll quickly go over that real fast. You're going to need, obviously, gin. We're using pink gin today. The spirits are gin, Campari, and sweet vermouth. These are all of the 3 spirits we're going to need for all the drinks that we're going to be making today. Simple syrup, just a little bit, just to adjust some of the balance on the Salty Dog. You're going to need raspberry syrup. We did a live video on, I think it was on Friday, on how to make this raspberry syrup. So definitely check out that video. But hopefully everybody's made that already and has it ready. Ruby Red grapefruit juice. Highly recommend the Ruby Red. The stuff in the can, like just generic grapefruit juice, is really, really bitter. And the beautiful thing about this particular drink, the Salty Dog, in my opinion, is when you use Ruby Red. So I pre-squeezed some here. But if you just have this, feel free to use that plus a juicer. I'll probably be doing that a little bit as well. An orange just for the zest on the Negroni. Some salt for a salted rim. Plenty of raspberries, plenty of ice, and all the cocktail ingredients that you see out here, or all the utensils that we see out here. So let's see. I think we're still waiting, hopefully to be able to bring Jeff in here. But so Jeff actually runs Gin Lane 1751. It's a fantastic product. Definitely go check out his website over at ginlane1751.com. But he was nice enough to send us this bottle of Victoria Pink Gin. And I've never had pink gin before. And it was funny because we had a call about a month ago. And I told him, like, maybe 10 years ago, I came across this story about what pink gin was. And I was like, oh, wow, that's super interesting. I'm not sure it will ever be important to me, but I'm going to remember pink gin in the off chance that one day it might actually, come up for some reason. And it did. It did. So it was pretty exciting when I saw this come through on some of our samples. And it's really, really beautiful. So I believe this is more of kind of a classic London dry style gin. It's got some great juniper, some nice citrus notes in there as well, and some nice bittering agents also. Now, the history of pink gin, hopefully I'm not stealing Jeff's thunder here, but hopefully we can get him on here as well to talk about it. But my understanding was this was kind of like a precursor to the old fashioned. So it was gin and a shot of Angostura bitters. Served, I believe it was room temperature, and you just kind of took it back. My understanding is how bitters kind of started was it was meant as kind of a tonic, a way of introducing a lot of botanicals into your diet, into your consumption. During the winter months, my understanding was during the winter months when you're eating a lot of just protein and heavy stuff, heavy carbs like potatoes and beets and stuff like that, that bitters was a way of kind of regulating you, of taking care of your digestive system. So that was kind of the introduction of bitters a long time ago. So
and we're back.
Nice, excellent. So I do see Jeff here.
So we're trying to solve the mystery of getting Jeff to join us here on the live stream. I'm not sure we have solved it yet, but the good news is we have lots of refreshments for the duration.
Right, absolutely. So we're just kind of bringing everybody up to speed on the kind of the history of bitters and how they got introduced into pink gin. And my understanding is it was more of a digestive. It helped kind of regulate you in the winter months. This is a story I heard many months ago. But the history was it was gin served with a shot of Angostura bitters. And during a phone call we had with Jeff, like I said, about a month ago or so, Jeff says, "Hi, I'm here with Chris." So yeah, it was just served with a shot of Angostura bitters. Perfect.
Wait, we got Jeff added as a moderator, but why don't do you want to maybe start making some cocktails and I'll see what I can do?
I think so, yeah. So why don't we do this, and if we can pull Jeff in, I know he's got a great story to tell. I'm really hoping that we can figure that out. But in kind of in a vein of celebration, let's just go ahead and get a drink. So what we're going to make is just a classic Negroni with pink gin. I've made this cocktail before with this particular gin, and it's really tasty. So it has a nice bitter note because he actually puts Angostura bitters in the gin itself. So it's got this nice bitter note to it that you're not going to get with the classic London dry style gin. So we're going to do, let's see, we're going to do 3/4 of an ounce of gin per person. So if this is a Valentine's date that you guys are doing, definitely double that. So 3/4 of an ounce. It's going to be equal portions all the way around. So 3/4 ounce of Campari, a nice kind of a bittersweet Italian liqueur. Definitely brings, is kind of one of the highlights of this particular cocktail in my opinion. And this is the only time we're going to be using this during this video. And of course, the last thing is some sweet vermouth. And all the ingredients are going to be equal portions. So 3/4 ounce of sweet vermouth. There we have it. So that's kind of the basics of the Negroni. Like I said, if this is a Valentine's date for anybody, definitely double all the ingredients. So 1.5 ounces, an ounce and a half, and an ounce and a half. And that should make 2 cocktails. So now we're just going to go ahead and add some ice and go ahead and stir this down. You're going to add a lot of ice. So we're just going to give this a stir for about 20 seconds or so, 20, 30 seconds. And what we really want to do is we're adding a lot of water in here. And obviously we're going to get it cold, but the water helps to kind of dilute it down a little bit, calms it down. And one of the really good things about a Negroni or anything stirred like this is when you get it right and you get the temperature right and the hydration or the water in there right, it creates a really cool texture. This is why we don't shake a Negroni, is because you get this really amazing kind of velvety texture when you pour it out. So we're just going to go ahead and stir that. And like I said, this is an absolutely delicious cocktail. This isn't like a beginner level cocktail. It's got some intense flavors in here, right? The gin brings some great kind of juniper notes and citrus notes to it. The sweet vermouth is kind of botanical and sweet. Campari is like bittersweet, like grapefruit orange kind of flavors. So there's a lot of really grown-up flavors in this drink. Don't let the color of the drink fool you. It's not sparkly sweet. This is very much an adult cocktail. So into a rocks glass, we're going to go ahead and add that. And we're just going to go ahead and strain it right into that bucket. And hopefully you guys are about the same pace as me. And the garnish here is just a twist of orange right across the top. And you express the oils. So I got a nice kind of big swath of orange here. I'm just going to put it between my fingers and gently push it. And when you do that, it's going to push the oils from the zest right across the top of the cocktail. And it makes a really beautiful kind of sweet, citrusy note right across the top of the drink. And you can actually see it when you're looking down into it. And you're just going to push it right across the top. And you can either drop it in if you like, or add a skewer to make it look fancy. But that is a Negroni, everybody. Cheers. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Like I said, big adult flavors in here. You got a really bitter hit to it right in the beginning. And then you get that kind of long tail sweetness and bitterness just throughout. This is a fantastic drink. I really do love this drink. I worked with somebody that knew a lot about Negronis. And he always mentioned that the only great time to have a Negroni, or the perfect time to have a Negroni, is right before a meal. It's an aperitif. It opens up the digestion, really helps with that. I tend to disagree, but he does know what he's talking about. So, but these are just fantastic, like I said, adult beverage, ton of flavor, really intense, but it really is a lot of fun. So there you are. Cheers. I'd love to hear kind of what you guys are thinking about this drink. It is one of my favorites, and hopefully you guys are enjoying it as well. Now, the one thing that I think this particular gin does really well, and when you contrast it with just a classic London dry style gin, if you ever have a Manhattan with Carpano Antica, it's big, it's heavy, it's sweet, and it's really intense. Oh, there you go. Cheers. It's really big, sweet, and intense. It's got a big, rich body to it. But if you sub out the Carpano Antica and put in Punta Mess, which is basically Carpano Antica with a lot more bitterness to it, that's what I think this does to a cocktail. It ramps up the bitterness to it, and it just creates more of a kind of a packed punch, and it's beautiful. It really is great.
This is one of my favorite cocktails of all time. I mean, me and everybody else in the entire world of cocktails. I think. Right. I love to use the Negroni as like a prank cocktail for people who are not in the world of mixology. As long as I know that they like this style of drink. Well, let's be honest, not always. Where I'll order this for somebody, and their expectation of the first sip is always that it's going to be like cloyingly sweet. It looks like candy in a glass. It really does. And I love that look on their face when they take their first sip and realize that is not what I expected. But maybe that's just me being cruel. I don't know. Yeah. So I'm just going to say hi to a couple people here. Jonathan Reed's here. Jen Beard's here. Obviously, Jeff Curley. Thank you so much for joining us, Jeff. He's in the comments, so definitely add some comments in there. Anything you want to know about his brand, definitely check it out over at ginlane1751.com. He's got a great lineup there. Victoria Pink Gin is just one of the gins he produces. But wasn't it perfect for Valentine's Day? It couldn't be better. And he does a really great fundraiser, I believe, for Breast Cancer Awareness Month, where he donates a big portion of the proceeds to breast cancer research. That's amazing. I didn't know that. Yeah, that was, I think, one of the reasons it came up on our radar. And it's a worthwhile cause, and he really does go all out to support a great cause like that. So
Definitely check out his gins over at ginlane1751.com.
Yeah, I think I missed Chris's conversation about the history of pink gin, but I will just say on an aesthetic level, I do love it. Yeah. I'm not normally like a pink person, but there's just something really wonderful about it. And I love that the color is really becoming a big part of the craft cocktail scene. I'm still holding out for some like really amazing blue liqueurs that aren't made of, blue number 4.
Number 4, right.
But we'll see. Maybe that'll be 2022.
So there's some great comments in the chat. Definitely go check them out in the chat, but I'll read off a couple here. Off Season says, how long will the pink gin keep after the bitters has been added? Jeff says, the pink gin is stable as regular gin. It will last a long, long time. There may be a small amount of settling in the bottles over time. But yeah, it should not go bad. So yes, the color is definitely important. It looks like candy, but it tastes very far from that.
I will say a Negroni is not really going to feature the color very well.
Yeah, so let's talk about the history of this particular drink, because it's so funny, because Julia and I, before we set up this live stream, had the same thing come across our newsfeed, and that was that the classic story of the Negroni has become controversial, like as of today.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a reputable website, but I'm always up for a little bit of cocktail gossip. Mm-hmm. So the rumor has it, again, unsubstantiated, and we'll try to find the link and put it somewhere in the comments. I think we had it open, but maybe not anymore. Just Google it. The rumor has it that there was not one, but 2 gentlemen with the last name of Negroni.
Yeah, and it was really interesting. I was actually reading it before this podcast, this YouTube Live, and basically Count Negroni, the story, the famous story that everybody has heard so far, was developed in, I believe, the 1920s, and Count Negroni was this big kind of flamboyant personality, and he wanted Americano, but Americano, I believe, is Campari Sweet vermouth and soda water. He wanted the soda water replaced and gin added to its place. So big, robust. I mean, this is kind of
can't blame him.
His character, right? From everything I've heard, and it happened in 1920, evidently. So today's story was that it was actually created in Africa, in Senegal, from a French, I think it was like general.
Also named Negroni.
Negroni, yeah. He was from Corsica, and he was Count Negroni as well. But he predated this story by 50 years. And the punchline of it was basically that he created this cocktail, this style of cocktail for his wedding. And I think it went back to like 1860 or something like that, 1870. But yeah, it was really interesting that like cocktail history is never as concrete as we might think it is. I can't even talk now. But yeah.
But I think it makes sense, right? Because especially a cocktail that is so, frankly, simple, with so few components, that is so delicious. Like, of course, 2 different people are going to come up with it, right?
Right.
It's like if you ever look into the story of the margarita, there are like 47 people who absolutely swear that they invented the margarita. And they probably all did.
Right.
Because it's just a really great drink, right? It's like, I think that lots of great minds came to the same conclusion. I think that's entirely likely here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, just fun. Cocktail history. Always take it with a grain of salt. Because
or a drink.
My favorite thing is like once you have a couple drinks, are you really going to remember the origin of any of this stuff? Like, so yeah. Right. So yeah, that's the Negroni.
I'll go ahead and move this aside so you have some more room.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So the next cocktail I think is probably one of the most underrated drinks when it comes to gin, and that is the Salty Dog. So classically, this is kind of a Greyhound with a rim of salt. Pretty easy. But it's served with vodka. And for me, it's just so much better with gin. So we're going to make that next. So the very first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut this guy open. So got our ruby red grapefruit here.
So the Greyhound, of course, is a grapefruit drink. And so it seems like, I don't know, I'm certainly not as into the cocktail scene as Chris is, but it seems like anytime you have a cocktail with grapefruit involved, there's like a 50% chance it's going to be some variation or version of the word dog. So when Chris mentioned a salty dog and I saw grapefruit, I was like, oh, well, it's obviously a Greyhound variation.
Right, absolutely. And the Greyhound has so many different variations. Like the Chihuahua is a Greyhound with tequila.
In a really small glass.
They had one I saw today that was called the Dalmatian, and it is a Greyhound with black pepper syrup in it. And I thought that was super interesting.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a lot of different variations of salty dogs, Greyhounds, whatever you want to call them. But yeah, definitely a lot of fun. So this is a built cocktail. You can shake it. You don't need to, though. So by built cocktail means we're going to make it right in the glass we're going to drink it in. So the very first thing you want to do, you have to do this first before anything else. I mean, you have to garnish it with salt.
Unless you're like really, really coordinated.
So how this plays out, if you don't, is you make the drink, you put the ice in, you put the gin in, you put the grapefruit juice in, and you're like, oh my God, I forgot to do this. And you wet the rim and you start throwing salt at it. I've done this. It's embarrassing. You don't look like a professional.
Doesn't work.
I didn't anyways. Yeah.
Or you can just do the lick the salt, take a sip thing, which is just not. It's just not as nice.
So critical. Salt first, please.
Definitely salt first.
So then we're going to just go ahead and add a ton of ice to this. And like I said, we're just going to build this right in the glass. I don't know if you've ever had this.
I don't think I have.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm not even sure. Gosh, it's been forever since I had a Greyhound.
So good.
Pretty excited.
So you can put as much or as little gin as you want. I'm going to go ahead and do about 2 ounces. And it's actually pink in the glass, too. It's really
so
cool.
Pretty.
It's very pretty. And then from here on out, you're basically just going to top it off with ruby red grapefruit juice. So I squeeze this beforehand, but feel free to kind of fresh squeeze it as well. And just top it all off. And
so
it creates
beautiful.
this really nice, refreshing drink. And then just give it a stir. That's pretty much it. It could not be simpler, but it really is just, it's delicious. It's so good. We used to serve these on a menu probably about 15 years ago when it was just vodka. And we sold through so much grapefruit. I had to have a squeezer just for grapefruit juice because it's so pulpy. Here, take that.
Oh, me.
But yeah, this is just
I realized if I do the straw, I don't get the salt. I didn't really think that through. So I'm going to try not to poke myself in the eye here.
But it really is just so delicious.
You're not kidding. That gin. That is, especially with the ruby red.
Mm-hmm.
Because one thing you always talk about is how grapefruit is one of those fruits where the varietal really matters. Mm-hmm. Obviously for color. But I mean, can you speak maybe a little bit more to that? Because I know ruby red was like, this was like a thing. We had to find a store that had ruby red grapefruit.
Absolutely. So there's so many different types of grapefruit, just like there's so many types of lemons, so many different types of limes. We get really focused on the one that is kind of most universal, most commercial. So for limes, I believe it's Tahitian limes. These guys, we know it, but there's key limes, there's Rangpur limes, there's 100 different varieties of limes, sweet lime, pink limes. So there's so many different varieties of this particular ingredient. Same thing is true with the grapefruit. And the really interesting thing is all these varietals have different tasting notes. They all have different acid levels. They all have different sugar levels. So when we start talking about getting really specific about cocktails and mixology, we have to get very specific if we're going to start to go away from anything that's other than commercially what's known. So that's why ruby reds are really, really important to get that specific style. So
if a recipe calls for grapefruit, mm-hmm. is there like a particular varietal that you think is like commercially? I
don't know the name of it off the top of my head, but I can describe what it is.
Is it the yellow one?
It's the yellow one.
The yellow one.
It's really tart. It's really bitter. It doesn't have the sweetness to it. Mm-hmm. And it's just kind of like, I remember as a kid having grapefruit juice out of a can, and it was absolutely terrible. I couldn't drink it. It was so bitter and I was set up for failure.
Yeah.
Because it looks good, just like Campari. And you have that the taste of it, and it's not what you expect.
So we have a couple of questions I'd love to throw at you, Chris.
Yeah, please.
Not in order, but can you just speak to how this is different from a traditional Greyhound, first of all?
So traditional Greyhound is vodka and grapefruit juice. That's pretty much it. Salty Dog is Greyhound with salted rim. So what we did today was replace the vodka with a gin, and everything else was pretty much the same. So salt, grapefruit juice, gin.
So the next question comes from Will Thomas, and I actually don't know the answer to this one, but he called us out.
Ooh, yeah.
On this lovely bottle.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He says, is that a bottle of Navon on the bottom shelf of your left? If so, how did you acquire it? They discontinued 15 years ago.
So I don't know if you can see this.
The dust.
The layer of dust on this bottle, I'm embarrassed and ashamed. I will fully
Sorry,
admit
I'm totally calling you.
I bought this probably 15 years ago.
Well, it must have been, right?
Yeah, and I've had it in my back bar. I had no idea it was such a commodity.
I know.
So I'm going to go ahead and put this
the
back
bidding
on the
will
shelf.
Start at $12.
All proceeds go to charity. But yeah, it's really good stuff. Kind of a creamsicle kind of flavor, a little bit of orange and vanilla from what I remember. But yeah, they haven't been in production for a very long time.
And clearly not something we use very often either.
So yeah.
And I also want to call out Jeff's comment. He suggested making a gin paloma as well,
yes.
which is a great riff on a salty dog. Just add some club soda and a bit of simple syrup. Without having it in front of me, I can already tell that would be so good. The paloma is just a winner.
Oh, that is yeah, absolutely. That's kind of like ginger beer, a mule to me. It's so good, and it's so flexible and so delicious that 100%. And one of the things I did in the notes is we made simple syrup on Thursday, and that was for this drink. So whenever you use fresh produce, you never know what the pH level is going to be. You never know what the sugar is going to be. So if you're drinking yours at home and it's just a little too bitter or a little too acidic, add about a quarter ounce or half an ounce of simple syrup, and that's going to increase the richness of the drink. It'll tame down some of that acid. And conversely, if it's not tart enough, it doesn't have any kind of acid to it, just add about half of a lime to it.
Your knife?
Yeah.
There you go.
So I'm actually going to add half a lime to mine, and that's going to boost the acidity. I like mine a little bit more on the acidic side. So I'm just going to add a little bit of lime juice to mine, because this one has a lot of sugar to it. And that'll help kind of brighten everything up a little bit. Now, we mentioned that we're going to talk a little bit about mixology, and we already kind of have with fruit varietals and all that. But I'd like to backtrack a little bit and talk about Negroni. So Negroni is classically equal parts gin, sweet vermouth, and Campari.
Oh, that really does.
Yeah, it brightens everything up.
That tiny bit of lime juice made a huge difference.
So if you look at all three of those ingredients, you have the ability to start substituting other ingredients in. So if, for example, instead of just a straight sweet vermouth, you could split it. Then you could do half dry vermouth, half sweet vermouth. It'll be a little bit more acidic, a little bit more bright. Also, if you wanted to do split out some of the Aperol and replace it with an Amaro, for example, or even do Aperol for a little bit more of a kind of a light summery version of it. Mm-hmm. All of this is possible. The Negroni is probably one of the most riffed on cocktails behind the bar. We have Negroni Week all across the country, probably all over the world. Every restaurant focuses on having a Negroni menu and their own Negroni riff, and a portion of the proceeds go to charity. So this is a great platform for substitution and experiment.
And one of the things, forgive me if you already said this, but I think one thing I think is really fun with the Negroni is to play with infusions.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, you can make whatever you want, right? I'm trying to remember what we made last fall. We made I remember, it was tea. We infused gin with tea and made this absolutely beautiful floral, it was not so much on the bitter side, kind of intentionally, but it was really beautifully floral and aromatic, and it was just absolutely stunning. But it was still a Negroni. It was just really based on this very beautifully infused gin, and it worked really nicely. Yeah,
and I've seen other people kind of substitute out the sweet vermouth for a cold pressed coffee, which they've infused with some botanicals as well. So there's a lot of opportunity here for substitution. It's a great platform for experimenting. And yeah, you could really have a lot of fun with 3 simple ingredients.
It's true. It's so true.
Yep.
Yeah, and Jonathan made a couple comments here about how the flavor of the gin comes in at the end, and it sounds like you might have added a little bit of lime juice to yours too, based on your comment, Jonathan. And it's true. It didn't seem like that tiny bit of lime juice would make a big difference, but it did. It definitely did for me, and it also kind of reinforces the gin for me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, obviously it's not like the traditional recipe, but it's another example of mixology, right? Where you take something and you say, I would like to make it taste different. And then you do, because you're in charge of your life, damn it.
Yeah. So like before I had this cocktail and it was a little bit flat. It didn't have a lot of character, right? It was just kind of like, you tasted the gin, you tasted the grapefruit, and that was about it. But the minute we added the acid to it, it really perked things up and it really made it a much more interesting drink. So if you're having a cocktail and it's just kind of flat, doesn't have a lot of character, add a little bit of acid to it. And that might help brighten everything up. So there you go. Mixology tips for that.
Mixology 101. All right.
Now let's.
Stacy, this I do love this juicer. It's got a double hinge, which is kind of fun.
It's pretty great. Yeah.
The only problem with it is it's kind of chintzy. It's made out of plastic, so it bends. So
it
kind
flexes
of
a little bit.
Waiting for it to crack on me, but I do love the extra hinge. I feel like you get a little extra squeezing power out of that.
Yep. So I guess we should make the last cocktail.
Twist my arm.
I know. Oh, not much history to this particular drink. Once again, like Julia mentioned, you have very simple ingredients here. So I think it was first imprinted like 1917-ish. But
the Greyhound?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Greyhound goes back to, probably much earlier than that, if I had to guess.
So the Salty Dog is a real cocktail. You didn't make that up?
Nope. Okay. It's a real cocktail. And the really interesting part is I think it was like 1930 it was started becoming popular. And vodka wasn't very popular in the United States around that time. So most likely it was gin. So.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
You mentioned it. So the OG,
right.
The OG Greyhound was probably gin.
So we're going to go ahead and take this out of the way. And we will make the showstopper cocktail. This is
my favorite cocktail of all time.
Stunning. It's Instagram worthy, and hopefully you guys will make this drink and share it on Instagram as well, because it is beautiful.
Now you have to make it pretty too, Chris.
I
just set yourself up for that one.
So for this cocktail, we will be using, let me go ahead and line up our ingredients here. The raspberry syrup that we made a couple days ago.
If anyone needs any, we have like 3 more gallons in our fridge. So just swing on by.
God, so much.
I tried it on cottage cheese this morning. Don't recommend it.
In yogurt, though.
It was really good in yogurt.
Mm-hmm.
It was super good on pancakes. But we still have like 3 gallons left.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot.
If anyone's in Southern California, just swing on by.
Yeah, we got a truckload of raspberry syrup for you.
We're gonna be having Clover Clubs for breakfast for the next 2 months.
So I'll go through really quickly how I made the syrup for anybody that didn't see the video. So basically, I think it was like about a pound of raspberries, an almost equal amount of water. So I got the raspberries, hot water. I put the raspberries in the hot water and just got it boiling for about 10 to 15 minutes. I used frozen because they pack more. They're kind of frozen at the height of the season, where right now fresh raspberries aren't at the peak of ripeness right now. So chose to go frozen. Good tip. If the fruit you're trying to use is out of season, go frozen. It's probably a lot better than what you can find in the store.
Well, and I think the other nice thing about frozen is it's going to be really consistent. Mm-hmm. If you get frozen fruit in March, if you get frozen fruit in August, it's probably going to taste the same. Of course, it won't taste as good as that same fruit in the peak of its ripeness, of course. But it's really, really stable. So if you're looking for a cocktail program, that's not a bad way to get a really stable level of sweetness and acid.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And usually it's a lot cheaper.
There's that.
That too. But
it will not work for garnish. I mean, it could, but it's just
sloppy. Kind of gross. I brought equal portions by weight, raspberry and water to a boil. I'll let it boil for about 10 to 15 minutes. And what you're really trying to do is break down the raspberries. You're trying to, open them up, release all the juice into the syrup, into the water at this point. Then you separate the chunks, the seeds from the raspberries, from everything else. And you set those aside because you can make fruit leather out of it, which we did.
I should have brought it.
I know, it's so good. So yeah, save the seeds, put them all off to the side, and you really want to just concentrate on the water. So now what you have is kind of this bright red water.
I don't know if you can see, but it's like really beautifully clear. Not a lot of seeds in here like you would normally see.
Mm-hmm. And so now you're basically just going to make a simple syrup out of it. So if you have a cup of raspberry water, add a cup of sugar to it while it's still hot and just stir it in. Technically, you want to weigh this stuff, but measuring gets you really, really close. If you don't have a scale or just lazy like me, just do equal volumes in a measuring cup.
And actually, Jonathan, once again mentioned in the comments a little tip or trick that is kind of cheating but kind of awesome, and that is raspberry jam.
Yes.
The key here is seedless.
Yeah.
You can buy seedless raspberry jam. I learned that fact like way too late in my life, for the record. I'm always getting like seeds in my teeth on my toast. You can buy seedless raspberry jam. Do you know off the top of your head how you would turn jam into that?
Yes. So you would get simple syrup and add a bunch of jam into it. Warm it up in the microwave for like 30 seconds. And all you're trying to do is break down the gelatin.
Mm-hmm.
And get it stirred. It's going to be a little bit more viscous, and you're not going to have that brightness you would, but it's still really good because it brings a ton of flavor.
And what's nice is you can make it in single serving portions, right? Or, 2. Mm-hmm. You don't have to make 3 gallons like we might have accidentally.
So raspberry syrup, 100%. If you're going to make simple syrup from scratch, you may want to drop some of the water. So instead of like a 1-to-1, maybe, make it more on a rich side. So 2 parts syrup to 1 part water.
2 parts sugar.
2 parts sugar to 1 part water. Yes, thank you. And then add the jam in and try to get it as liquid as possible. And just add a little bit of water and creep up on it.
And just keep making cocktails so it tastes right.
Yeah, experimenting.
Yeah.
So the other really good hack, and this is Julia's hack, because I was doing this old school all the time, putting a boiler on, getting water to boil, and then adding a bunch of stuff into it. And she's like, why don't you just put it in the microwave? I was like, that's stupid. No, I don't want to do that, because none of the restaurants I ever worked at had a microwave. And it worked, and it's delicious, and it's 30 seconds.
I got the lazy.
Fruit syrups, throw them in the microwave, guys. It's hack of the century for cocktail creation.
I mean, frankly, it's basically just the same premise as kind of maceration, expediting the process. And if you are macerating and you need to do it like that, throw it in the microwave. Yeah. It doesn't even have to get that warm. It actually just really expedites the process.
Yep. So yeah, that's the story behind the raspberry syrup. That's how you make it. If you want to make it quickly, like Julie mentioned, simple syrup, throw it in a microwave with some raspberry jam, and you'll get something pretty close. Mm-hmm. That being said, the end product you want is something nice and fresh. You're going to get that berry flavor, but you're going to get a good amount of acidity to it. You can always add a little bit more sugar to it, but you're probably not going to be able to take some of that sugar back. So kind of creep up onto it, onto the sweetness.
But you can always add a little more acid to your cocktail too.
You could,
right?
Absolutely. So this is mixology.
Mixology.
Yay! So once again, these are the ingredients we're going to be using. So it's on the way. Gin, raspberry syrup, egg white, just the whites, and lemon juice. So what we have here is kind of a classic sour. There is another way of making it with dry vermouth. And if you ever go to the Clover Club in New York, that's how they make it. But I found this one is a little bit easier for me. I'm not big on kind of that sharpness that comes from dry vermouth in this particular
Is it
cocktail.
Instead of gin?
No, you split it. So you go, I think it's like an ounce and an ounce.
Okay.
So it has a nice little wine quality, and people love that one. I prefer this one, but there is another method out there. Feel free to try that one as well. So I'm going to stop talking and make the cocktail.
Good man. I'm reading through the comments here. Raspberry syrup. Oh, Phil. Phil says Mel is in our town, and yes, Mel, you can have all the raspberry syrup.
Come on over, Mel. We got you. So I added about 2 ounces of gin to the drink or to the shaker here. I'm going to add 1 ounce of raspberry syrup.
It's just beautiful.
And about the same amount.
And Stacy, the name of this drink is the Clover Club.
Ah, yes.
What a
knife.
You keep putting it down somewhere.
I know. So messy.
Your knife?
You have to chew into the thing. Put a dirty dish here. So 1 lemon is usually about 1.5 ounces. juice. So I'm just going to pour this right into my jigger here. Perfect. Great. And then just pour it in.
Ooh, someone says our barware is sexy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are a little bit biased. This is our very own barware.
So if you are doing this for 2 people, obviously double everything. So it'll be 3 ounces of gin, ounce and a half. No, I'm sorry. 4 ounces of gin, 2 ounces per person. 2 ounces of raspberry syrup, 1 ounce per person. 2 ounces of lemon juice, or 1 ounce per person. And finally, 3/4 ounce of egg whites. I simply just kind of crack it right in.
And this is something you've mentioned before, where ideally you'd be getting 3/4 ounce. Not every egg is the same size, of course.
Right.
So if you're trying to really perfect something repeatable, go ahead and measure. Obviously, we don't always do that.
Right.
And frankly, a lot of people don't. A lot of people just sort of go with 1 egg white and call it good enough.
Yeah.
Works for me too.
Yep.
But if you have like an abnormally large egg, you may want to measure, or abnormally small.
And obviously, if you're going to be making this for 2 people, add a little bit more egg whites to your drink. Now I'm going to go ahead and dry shake this. What that means is I'm going to shake this without ice. And the point of this is to get as much air into this drink as I possibly can and create that foam. So that's what I'm going to be doing right now. You want to shake it for about 15 seconds. And I'll show you how to use one of these guys and how to open it up. But the thing about egg whites is when you shake them, hopefully people haven't started yet, but it creates this gas inside of it. It creates a little bit more volume inside. So what naturally wants to happen is these two pieces want to separate. The shakers want to separate. So you want to apply some pressure and keep it sealed. This is our weighted shaker. The weighted unweighted is actually my preference for egg white cocktails. I just couldn't find one. But that creates a much tighter seal. So that's one of the big differences between a weighted and a weighted unweighted that we sell. So seal it, and I'm going to go ahead and shake for about 10-15 seconds.
And while he does that, I will talk about the dry shake versus the reverse dry shake. The reverse dry shake was really like in vogue, like what, 2 years ago? I want to say about 2 years ago. And the difference is that with a dry shake, you do exactly what Chris is doing now. You're going to shake it without ice. Then you're going to add ice and shake it again. The reverse dry shake is pretty intuitive. Mm-hmm. You're going to shake it with ice. You're going to strain out the ice. And then you're going to shake it again.
Yeah. And there are pros and cons to both. For me, I prefer this method if I'm going to do any kind of bitters stenciling or artwork on top because it creates uniform bubbles across the surface. If I just want volume and I want a big giant pillow of egg whites on top, I'll go the other direction and use egg white or do the reverse dry shake because it creates giant air bubbles that are irregular. So you have some small ones, some big ones, and it's just a lot of egg white foam.
Right, but if you look up close, it's not that like consistent. Oops.
Sorry. One more. How rude.
Oh wait.
Okay. There we go.
It's not that like consistent, beautiful, velvety smoothness that you get with the dry shake. The reverse dry shake, like Chris said, you get a lot of different sizes of bubbles and a lot bigger bubbles, which again creates the overall sort of height and volume. But for my taste, I really like that velvety smoothness. And so that I would definitely recommend just the standard dry shake for that.
Perfect. So now we're just going to go ahead and shake this like we would a normal cocktail. We're going to go ahead and seal it. Once again, we're going to be applying pressure as we're shaking because this thing's going to want to break loose on us. And Valentine's Day covered in egg white cocktails, probably not the best way to roll.
I mean, I've heard that eggs are like a hair treatment. I don't know.
Yeah, I do know. It's not. All right. So I was going to talk to you about how to open these cocktail shakers real quick. So some of these can be a little bit hard to open. And what we want to do when we're opening this cocktail shaker is to take the big cocktail shaker and point it down. Then we're going to take the 3 fingers, our thumb, our ring finger, and our pinky, and we're going to go ahead and grab the large shaker with that. With your pointer and your middle finger, you're going to push on the cocktail shaker this direction. So you can see this slight bend in my shaker. We're going to be pushing over here. Now, the other thing you might be able to see is this natural kind of separation between a metal. So there's a frost band here. This is where your cold cocktail is. There's kind of an unfrosted portion here, but that line is where the two cocktail shakers meet. So when we smack this, we're going to be aiming for that separation right there, because we just want to create a little bit of an air pocket. The air is going to rush in. It's going to break the seal. So once again, 3 fingers on the bottom, pointer, middle finger here, pushing this way while I'm hitting this direction. So hopefully this is going to open up right on me. 1, 2, 3. There you go.
Well done.
So thank goodness. But if you have trouble with it, that's what you want to do. You want to aim for that spot, and that's how you would open a cocktail shaker. This is really important with glass. I've seen a lot of people bang them on the bar tops because they can't get it open. Don't do it. Yeah. So that's why I like metal. So the last thing, obviously, we're going to go ahead and just pour this out.
I just love that color.
And what's crazy is when you originally pour it out, it looks a little bit like Pepto-Bismol. I'm going to go ahead and own that. But that's because of the emulsion of the egg whites. And as it separates, you're going to get that beautiful ruby red color and that separation on the top with the foam. Now, the important part with any egg white cocktail is to hold it and shake it a little bit longer than you expect to. Because all that egg white you work so hard to create, it's all at the bottom of your tin. So just going to hold it and give a good shake and get as much out as you possibly can. There you go.
That looks like a creamsicle. It looks amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. But you can see how much egg white foam you have. Sometimes, I'll put that right there so you can see it. It's starting to separate out. The color's getting a little bit different. Sometimes you're not going to get as much egg white foam. Sometimes that could be the result of not using super fresh eggs, or that you didn't put enough egg white in. But yeah, just give it a shake. And if you're having a hard time building this much foam, try the other version of the shake, the reverse dry shake, because that'll really help you build that up.
That's beautiful.
Cool. And then the last step is the garnish. So just a couple of raspberries. So one.
I feel like I've also seen this one with lemon peel too.
You can do lemon peel, absolutely. And that's probably not a bad idea with egg white cocktails in general. It's like a pillow, which is something I'm going to do now, is just put a little bit of lemon oil right across the top.
So what this does is by spraying the lemon oil, you're adding an aroma to the top of the drink, which is kind of like an insurance policy against egginess. Because as egg white cocktails begin to warm up, that slight eggy smell starts to come out a little bit, and it's not awesome.
Yeah, it's not the best.
So by adding this little bit of citrus oil across the top of the cocktail, it basically just kind of goes over the top of that. So instead of smelling egg, you smell this lovely citrus aroma, and frankly, it also just adds to the experience too, especially if you've already got that citrus in the cocktail. It just makes it that much better. It's
true. And and it just kind of prevents that wet dog smell like Julian mentioned. Now, Jeff made a really good recommendation, and that is another great gin egg white cocktail is the Pink Lady. So this actually kind of ties into the history of this particular cocktail. From my understanding anyways, is this started at the Clover Club, and I think it was in Philadelphia.
Is it White Lady or Pink Lady?
I think he mentioned Pink Lady. No, he said White Lady.
With pink gin.
With pink gin.
Ah.
Nice. But it was very popular, and the Clover Club was a men's club. So a bunch of gentlemen would come and drink a bunch of these, and
which I find hilarious because anybody would look at this and be like, "Oh, girly drink, oh."
Right, and this was like back in like this was like late 1800s, early 1900s. So
yeah, men's club.
Right, and what replaced it, because I guess they publicized it, and when it got publicized, it had already fallen out of fashion, and the cocktail that replaced it was the Pink Lady. For popularity, anyways. So,
again, super manly cocktail.
So that's the Clover Club.
Can I drink it now?
Please,
I've been staring at it this whole time.
Cheers, everybody.
Now, if you're going to use a cocktail pick, don't stab yourself.
Right. No.
Pro tip.
Yep. Pro tip.
I'm gonna end up with raspberries up my nose.
So I'm gonna read a couple of the comments here. Stacy says, "Gorgeous, thank you."
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a beautiful cocktail. Like I said, it's Instagram worthy. It's so beautiful. It's definitely an eye catcher. Supermarket eggs are totally okay. Fresher the better. Some people sterilize their eggs, and this is a whole conversation we can have around egg whites.
Which we actually have a really good blog post about this. I know, kind of a cop out to send you to a blog post, but it's like really long and with lots of information. So if you just Google a bar above egg whites, there's an article there. There's a lot of non-egg options you can use. There's also other egg options you can use that are safer. For example, Chris did a test many years ago where he actually tested powdered egg whites in a cocktail, and frankly, we couldn't tell the difference. It was, I know, right?
Oh, yum. Yum.
Do you need a moment?
Oh, no, I'm good now.
But yeah, so powdered egg whites, you can also buy those pasteurized egg whites in a carton. Obviously, you're going to want to use them pretty quickly. That's the one thing. So that's something that you may not want to do in like a home bar. Somebody mentioned Aquafina, aka Aquafaba, which I just thought that was hilarious because Aquafina would probably water down your cocktail a little bit. Aquafaba is another good one. Plus, there's all these crazy cocktail foams nowadays. I'm not super familiar with them. They sound like, what is it, like Ready Whip? Not Ready Whip. That's
like a whipped cream.
I mean, that could be good.
It is very creamy. But there's so many different options. As Julie mentioned, the powdered egg whites totally work. And the pasteurized egg whites, you really can't tell the difference. So whatever your comfort level is. And I know there's a big difference between eggs in the United States and eggs in Europe because there's a whole thing about that.
But somebody mentioned a really good comment, and that is washing the outside of your eggs.
Absolutely.
It seems weird because you're like, I'm not using the outside of the eggs, but it's actually super important.
Yeah, and so that's where all the salmonella lives. So if you're immunocompromised, have a low immune system, obviously egg whites in general, raw, uncooked eggs, probably not the best choice. But that is another measure you can have, just basically sterilizing the outside of your eggs to kind of hopefully knock down as much of that salmonella as possible. And kind of a light bleach solution would be fine. And the other thing you could do is, if you really want to take this to a whole nother level, you could start making cocktail foams. This is a whole thing about like molecular mixology or modernist cooking. So you could do really interesting things like create a complete different flavor of foam than the raspberries. So for example, like a rosemary foam or a rosemary ginger foam on top with the raspberry syrup underneath without egg whites in it. So now you're really playing with people's brains as you're drinking it.
Getting weird.
You're starting to separate these components out. And then once you do that, you could really just hone it in and make it whatever you want and really have some fun and go any direction you want to go with. It really is your own creativity once you're able to kind of do those kinds of things. So
there's a lot you can play with there. The world of foams is definitely a lot longer than this evening's cocktail party.
Exactly.
But like, go to town, right? It's your drink. Go crazy. I think there's a lot of things you can play with there. And especially in the last sort of year or two, there've been a lot of vegan things coming on the market because frankly, some people don't want raw egg whites. We actually had a funny story when I was pregnant.
Right.
We went to a restaurant and I was already in the booth.
Gosh,
Had I been standing up, this wouldn't have been an issue, but I was already in the booth. And so nobody could see the belly. And so I asked, is there any way that the bartender could make a non-alcoholic cocktail? And the waiter was lovely and he ran off to the bar, had her make a non-alcoholic cocktail, and it appeared and it had egg whites. And obviously as a pregnant person, you're not supposed to have raw eggs. And so I had to sadly decline said cocktail. Actually, no, I don't think I declined. I think Chris enjoyed it. And then when I stood up to leave, the waiter looked at me and went, oh!
It had egg whites and bitters and everything.
And all the things. Yeah, so it's just a funny story because you always think of the alcohol, but I did not think to request no egg whites.
Right.
But again, all the more reason to start looking into options like aquafaba, which is the juice at the bottom of your chickpea can. So bonus, hummus, and cocktails.
Yep, exactly.
Or you can do what we do, where you make hummus and then you put the aquafaba in the fridge and then you forget about it for like 4 weeks and then it gets really weird looking and you throw it away.
Yeah, that's 100% what's happened every single time.
Yeah.
But as far as I think we covered the history. We've talked a little bit about mixology, but I mean, you could do so many different things. Like we talked about the water in this. When you're making that rosemary or the raspberry water, that's an opportunity to add just a bunch of other flavors. Rosemary, ginger, obviously we talked about.
And if I may, Jeff made an awesome suggestion, and he suggested jalapeno in the raspberry syrup, 100%. Which just sounds fantastic.
Yep, absolutely. And that combination of spicy sweet is just kind of classic. So you can go a lot of different directions with that. Herbal, you can really go anywhere with just a syrup tea, like add a tea note to it.
I could see that working really well with us.
Like a bergamot orange tea with that would be stunning. It would be really, really good. So there's a lot of opportunity here. Obviously, substitution, pink gin, you're bringing some bitters to the party now, and really amplifying the flavor.
I like to bring bitters to the party.
Who doesn't? But there is a lot of opportunity to really start to experiment with some of the ingredients, really taking your cocktail to a whole different direction and having some fun and creativity. But yeah, plenty of options for you. So
where'd the Negroni go? Did you steal it?
Nope. Yes.
There we go. I love the color. I love the color of the lineup here. I think this is just beautiful. We've made it to 7:00, so that is 1 hour.
Yep.
I know I really do want to apologize. We had every intention of having Jeff come and join us on the live feed. Unfortunately, when we logged into our live streaming software, Jeff joined us and the whole thing went black.
Booted. Yeah. And we were scrambling to try to figure it out.
So we rebooted, we started the computer, we poked it, and unfortunately we were not successful. So super, super grateful, Jeff, for you just rolling with the punches today.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Joining us in the chat. Frankly, you had some awesome mixological suggestions. That jalapeno suggestion is happening for sure. In fact, I think we should try that with the remaining raspberry syrup.
Okay.
On pancakes. That's happening.
But yeah, absolutely. And somebody asked if they could ask some questions. Can we ask other questions?
Let's definitely open it up for Q&A.
Please.
We have a lot more cocktails to get through.
Stacy, knock us out. What do you want? Anybody can ask any questions, gin related or otherwise. We're happy to answer any questions. I know Jeff is still in the comments. The other thing is Jeff's in New York time, so it's very late for him on Valentine's Day. So seriously, go check out his gin.
And actually, honestly, it is delicious.
It is so good.
Not just saying that for the color. It is a lovely bottle of gin, both on the shelf and in your mouth.
Exactly, and man, does it stand out. So it is a great mixing gin as well. So
remind me the URL on that one.
ginlane1751.com. Obviously, take a look at his social media. I think you can find it on his website. But he's been very generous. He's spent a lot of time just being in his chat room with us, and I really wish he could have been here, but our technology did not work out so well.
Did not cooperate this evening.
So yeah, please fire away any questions you guys have. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody. Thank you for joining us, but we'll monitor the questions now. Ask every single one I can see.
We've got a lot of questions about the Victoria Gin, which is, I think Jeff's going to hold the fort on those.
Yeah. Let's see.
Somebody had a question earlier about when we were talking about grapefruits. Somebody was asking about Cara oranges. Can you speak to that a little bit? I'm sorry, I meant to bring it back up and then I forgot completely. Sorry, person.
Yeah. So Cara oranges. I assume we're talking about kind of in the vein of citrus, right?
We were talking about varietals of grapefruit,
right? Mm-hmm.
And they mentioned Cara oranges.
Cara oranges are beautiful. They are really, really great. If there's many different types of oranges out there, obviously navels, mandarins, satsumas. There's so many different varietals. Cara is this cool combination of like orange and grapefruit, but it has like this really nice kind of sweetness to it as well. So that could be a really good substitute for ruby red grapefruit juice. And you cut into it, and it is red. It is just beautiful. It's so great. In fact, we should try dehydrating some of those for garnish. I think we ate all. The only orange tree we have right now is a Cara orange because I love them so much. They're really great. But we ate them all, didn't we? Yeah, we did. So when more of them appear, we will dehydrate them. Right. And then let's see. So in terms of flavor, are they bitter or are they more? They are kind of like, because they look like a grapefruit, but it sounds like they do. They actually have some grapefruit notes to me, anyways, but they're not very bitter. More sweetness. Mm-hmm. So it very much kind of complements a ruby red, in my opinion. They're really great though. I highly recommend them, and they're beautiful when you cut them open. They are really beautiful. Yeah. Especially if you don't expect it. Mm-hmm. Which has happened to me. I completely forgot our tree was a Cara orange tree. I cut into it, was like, oh, I forgot about fancy. That is fancy. Let's see. Jonathan Reed says, I see the roses behind you. We garnished the raspberry drink with finely chopped rose petals. Very pretty. I can see that working really well because then we add a whole nother layer of fragrance.
I think one thing I love about the Clover Club and pretty much any egg white drink is the opportunity to do stencils.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish we still had it, but beet powder.
We do have beet powder.
Is it nearby?
No.
Beet powder makes a gorgeous stencil. The problem is you got to be a little careful because it definitely smells kind of like dirt.
Earthy.
We'll go with earthy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it looks amazing, but you're going to want to work with it a little bit to kind of cover up the aroma because it kind of smells like dirt.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks...
Yep, Cara, like blood oranges. Absolutely. I actually have some blood oranges just off camera.
So wait, Cara is not the same as blood orange?
No, they're totally
different. Oh, they're 2 different.
Yeah. But like the Caras look like oranges, but inside they're very different. They look like blood oranges almost, not quite as red. Blood oranges, on the other hand, have certain like varying degrees of redness on the outside and really, really dark red on the inside. So much deeper red on the inside. And they're a little bit spicy to me. They have a little bit of spiciness to them. Let's see, what else do we got here?
Stacy was asking if this is our home bar. So the honest answer is yes and no. This is our garage.
It's true.
We have the heater running in the background, so I don't have to wear like a big coat. This is our garage, but it is also a real, honest to goodness bar. Everything here is real, except if I'm being totally honest, this is wallpaper. But yeah, Chris actually built this. We moved in here almost 18 months ago, and Chris built this with kitchen cabinets and
Home Depot kitchen cabinets,
a whole bunch of
IKEA countertop.
I wish you could see this from our angle. You guys see this like beautiful presentation. It's just a mess in that direction.
Hold on, one second here. Hold on.
There it is.
There it is. That little weird thing popping in the corner. Yep, that's the mic. Sorry.
Hopefully that wasn't too loud.
But yeah, so this is just kind of put together. This was made as a much easier way than the last bar we made, which I made from scratch.
We do have a good amount of Campari. I think it's just because we're low on
bottles.
We're low on that
one. That one, and the mini.
Oh, I forgot we had the mini. Yeah. You're right. Wait, hold on. Oh no, that's grenadine. That's different. Sometimes I feel like it's a little bit of a scavenger hunt here.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. So.
Oh, thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate it. We were definitely stressing out a little bit in the beginning.
Yeah.
Thanks for holding down the fort on your own, Chris.
I know. I was stumbling a little bit, and then I had a decoction, and I was fine.
Oh, there you go.
But yeah, that's pretty much all the cocktails we're going to make today. Once again, Jeff, thank you so much. And we really appreciate you kind of rolling with the punches, as Julia mentioned. And really appreciate the gin. This is really beautiful. I will be using this bottle up within the next couple of days.
And it's been really fun to experiment with it too, because we haven't really worked a lot with pink gin, and it definitely does change things. So thanks for that opportunity as well.
Absolutely.
So if you're coming in just at the end here, or if you just want to recap, we do have an easy downloadable shopping list and list of the cocktail recipes over on the website atabarabove.com/Valentine. Easy enough to remember, right? So that's a good way to go and grab the recipes once again. But thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. We've had a lovely romantic evening with you. And now I think we're going to go have a lovely romantic evening with our toddlers.
Yep. Well, cheers, everybody. Happy Valentine's Day. And hopefully we'll do some more events like this in the future.
Absolutely.
So
thank you so much for coming, everyone. Have a great Valentine's Day. Cheers.
Cheers.